Hello. Good morning, everyone. And I'm so glad you're here. I so as we're joining, I'd like for you to comment one in the chat so I know that you're here. And I always enjoy going back and reading your comments afterwards. So I would like to start with a question. Have you ever spent way too much of your time trying to figure out what someone else was thinking? Maybe they sent a short text. Maybe they canceled plans. Maybe they seemed a little different than usual. And before you knew it, your mind had filled in the blanks. I know mine had. In fact, it was just this week I caught myself doing exactly that. I found myself replaying a conversation, wondering what someone meant, trying to predict what they were going to do next. And after about the 15th trip around that mental hamster wheel, I finally laughed out loud because I thought to myself, Jill, what am I doing? I have become an unpaid detective. I was investigating someone else's life without getting paid. So has anyone else ever done that? Have you overanalyzed a text message, replayed a conversation, or spent way too much energy trying to figure someone else out? Comment a 1 below if you have. And then, start it. This will be the third week, and I still don't have live activity. All right, so anyway, comment a 1 below, and I promise I'll go back and read your comments after we're done, along with your questions, because I love helping you all. And if you're new here, I'm Dr. Jill Jansen, owner of Jill's Spectrum Coaching. I'm a coach, educator, and someone who is endlessly curious about why we think, feel, and react the way we do. And I believe awareness is where lasting change begins. Because when we understand what's driving our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, we stop living on autopilot. We begin making choices that are more aligned with who we want to become. And that's why I love these conversations. Not because I have life all figured out. None of us do. I choose these topics because they're teaching me something first. In fact, this was one of the hardest texts I've written. Not because I don't believe in boundaries, but because I'm still learning how to live them. And I don't want to wait until I've mastered something before I talk about it. But I do want to share what I'm learning while I'm living it. And my hope is that something I discover along the way might help you discover something about yourself too. So this week's discovery caught me completely off guard. I thought I had a relationship problem, but when I paid more attention to it, the more I realized I didn't have a relationship problem at all. What I did have was an attention problem. My attention, I realized this week, had drifted away from my own life and landed squarely on someone else's. That realization made me ask a question I'd never asked before. What if boundaries aren't just what we say to other people? What if they begin where we choose to place our attention? And that's what I'd love to explore with you today. So after I caught myself becoming an unpaid detective, I couldn't stop thinking about it because I realized something. I wasn't actually trying to understand another person. I was trying to feel certain. And those are two very different things. Last week, we talked about how fear fills in the blanks, and our minds don't like uncertainty. So when we don't know what's happening, we naturally create a story. When someone doesn't text us back, my mind, I'm thinking, ooh, they might be upset. When someone cancels plans, what did I do wrong, is what I'm thinking. And when someone seems quieter than usual, I bet they're pulling away. Meanwhile, they're just taking a nap. They're busy at work. Or they're standing in line at Costco, wonder why, yeah, the Sunday going to Costco on a Sunday afternoon was a good idea. But I want to illustrate that our minds are amazing and they can build an entire story from almost all, like no information at all. And that's the problem. We mistake this story for the truth. And this week I noticed something I never noticed before. Every minute I tried to figure someone else out was a minute I wasn't paying attention to myself. I wasn't asking myself, what am I feeling? What do I need? What do I actually know? Instead, I was asking, what are they thinking? What are they going to do? And when are they going to text me? Without realizing it, I had slowly handed someone else my attention. And attention is one of the most valuable things we have, because wherever our attention goes, our energy flows. That realization didn't make me judge myself. It made me curious. I asked, what am I looking for? And the answer surprised me. I was looking for certainty, for safety. And that's when another question came to my mind. What if the boundary I needed wasn't with the other person? What if the boundary was with my own attention? What if coming home to myself simply started with noticing where my attention had gone? And that one question changed everything. I felt huge shifts this week, still recovering from all the shifting and realization. But maybe that first boundary isn't saying no to someone else. Maybe it's gently bringing our attention back to ourselves. And that's what made me wonder. Maybe I've been thinking about boundaries all wrong. And that question stayed with me this whole week. What if the boundary I needed wasn't with another person? What if it was with my own attention? And the more I thought about it, the more I started wondering, when we hear the word boundary, we immediately think of another person. I need to tell them no. I need to tell them to stop. I need to tell them to change. But what if that's not where boundaries begin? Let me ask you something. Has anyone ever asked you to do something, and before they even finished asking, you already knew the answer? Your body knew. Maybe it sounded like, I'm exhausted. I don't have the capacity. I really don't want to. But then your mind joined the conversation. And it's like, come on, you don't want a disappointment. Think about that. They might think that you're selfish and you can rest tomorrow. It's only one time. So, yeah, my brain likes to negotiate like it's winning a court case. And after the brain comes in, the words that come out for me are sure. Even though I'm exhausted, I'd be happy to, even though I'm tired. And then 5 minutes later, I'm driving home thinking, why did I say yes? I didn't want to do that. And then I get frustrated at myself. So this week I asked myself a question that completely changed how I thought about boundaries. Who actually crossed that boundary? Was it the person who asked? Or did I cross my own boundary? I ignored what I already knew. And that realization felt incredibly freeing, because people are allowed to ask. People are not mind readers. They don't know your capacity. They don't know what your day has been like. And the first boundary isn't with another person. The first boundary is with ourselves. Can I be honest? Like, it's the first thing you have to ask is, can I be honest with what I need? And then, can I trust what my body is telling me? And then, can I honor my values? So even if someone else doesn't understand them, my boundaries begin here. And it's not controlling someone else's behavior. It's our way of staying connected to ourselves. With that realization, it completely changed the way I thought about boundaries. I stopped seeing them as walls that keep people out, and I started seeing them as guardrails. Guardrails aren't there to punish us. They're on the road so they can keep us from drifting off course. Healthy boundaries do the same thing. They help us stay connected to our values, our needs, and ourselves. And once I saw boundaries that way, another question came up. If boundaries are about staying connected to myself, why are they so difficult? So if I already know what I need, why do I keep talking myself out of it? And maybe you've wondered the same thing. Why it's sometimes easier to disappoint ourselves than risk disappointing someone else. Because let's be honest, most of us don't want to wake up excited to have that uncomfortable conversation. We'll answer emails, clean the kitchen, organize a junk drawer, anything except saying, this doesn't work for me. At least that was my situation. So I got curious. Why? Why can one little word, no, feel so incredibly difficult? It's not because I don't know how to say it. What I realized it's because of everything I believed it might cost me. I wondered, would they get upset? Would they think I'm selfish? What if they stop liking me? What if I lose that relationship? But none of those questions were about boundaries. They were about fear. And fear has an incredible way of convincing us that protecting a relationship is more important than protecting ourselves. But here's what I eventually realized. That fear didn't begin yesterday. For many of us, it began years ago when we were children. And that's where we learned what helped us feel emotionally safe. Maybe you became the helper, the peacemaker, or the achiever. Maybe you learned to stay quiet, or maybe you learned to read everyone else's emotions before you ever learned to recognize your own. Those weren't flaws. Those were brilliant survival strategies that helped us belong. They helped us avoid conflict. They helped us feel loved. The problem isn't that we learned those strategies. The problem is that we kept using them long after we no longer needed them. What once protected us can quietly begin controlling us. And that realization filled me up with so much compassion for myself because I finally understood something. There wasn't anything wrong with me. I wasn't weak. I wasn't broken. I had simply learned to believe that keeping other people comfortable was the safest way to keep myself safe. And for me, that looked like tying my sense of safety to relationships. If someone was upset with me, if someone pulled away, if I thought I disappointed someone, I internalized it and I felt like something was wrong with me. So I became really good at reading the room. And making sure that everyone else was okay. And really good at anticipating other people's needs. But with all of my attention focusing outside of myself, I wasn't very good at noticing my own needs. And without realizing it, I had become loyal to everyone except myself. I kept saying yes when my body was saying no. And I kept over explaining when a simple answer would have been enough. I kept trying to earn peace instead of protecting it. And last night I asked a question to myself that changed everything. What helped me survive that I no longer need? And that one question replaced shame with curiosity. Awareness doesn't erase fear, but it does create space, space to pause, space to notice, and space to choose. So I ask myself now, do I want fear making this decision? Because fear will always have something to say, but it doesn't have to be the one driving my life. And that's where self-leadership begins. Not with having no fear, but with choosing your values, even when fear is sitting quietly inside of you. And once I understood that, I realized the most powerful thing I could do wasn't react. It was actually pause. And that pause changed everything. And by this point, I had realized something. But it was something that I already knew. My body knew, my intuition knew. The difficult part wasn't knowing. The difficult part was trusting myself enough to act on what I already knew. And that made me realize something about self-trust that I had never thought about before. For a long time, I believed self-trust was something people either had or they didn't. And now I see it differently. I see self-trust as built on one small decision at a time. It's ignoring what we already know. Or I'm sorry, it's not ignoring what we know and teaching ourselves that our needs are important and our feelings are important. So other people's comfort doesn't matter more than my honesty. And that belief of I'll take care of myself later is abandoning myself. So I'm teaching myself now, every day I wake up, I say my voice matters, my needs matter, I can rely on myself, and I will not leave myself. And that's how self-trust grows. Not all at once, but it's one honest decision at a time. And that's where I discovered something that changed my life. I call it the power of the pause. Because when we're triggered, or when something asks something of us, or when guilt shows up, our instinct is to react. It's either freeze, fawn, flight, but our instinct is to answer immediately, explain, justify, fix, just make sure everyone else is okay. But that pause interrupts the pattern. Not because it makes fear disappear. It doesn't. But it gives time for that awareness, your awareness, time to catch up. So instead of reacting automatically, I pause. I take one slow breath and I ask myself 3 questions. What am I feeling? What am I afraid might happen if I was honest? And what choice is most aligned with my values? And those 3 questions have changed countless moments in my life. Because sometimes after asking them, I will still say yes, but it is a wholehearted, all-in yes. It is not a guilty yes, not a fearful yes. And if I'm not fully in, I say no. And with this, I've learned something surprising. Healthy boundaries doesn't have to sound harsh. They can sound like I'd love to help, but I don't have the capacity today. Or that doesn't work for me. Or I need some time to think before I answer. With all those statements, none of those responses are about controlling another person. They're simply being honest. And that's what a boundary really is. It's not telling someone else what they can or cannot do. It's communicating what you will or won't do. And here's what surprised me the most. The more I practiced doing that, the less I needed everyone else to agree with me. And slowly, I'm over-explaining less. I'm asking for permission less. And I'm also working on stopping trying to convince people that my boundaries need to be considered. Because I know now my choices are aligned with my values. And there's so much peace in that. Because healthy boundaries aren't getting someone else to understand you. They're simply becoming someone you can rely on. And someone who listens to themselves, honors themselves, and stays with themselves, even when life gets uncomfortable. So every time you pause instead of reacting, and every time you choose your values over fear and stay connected to yourself, you make another deposit into the self-trust fund. And over time, those small moments become a life where you know you won't leave yourself, and your inner child knows it's not going to be abandoned again. So as we wrap up today, I want you to leave with one final thought. When I first started thinking about boundaries, I felt overwhelmed. And I thought they were mostly about learning how to say no. But I hope today I've explored a very different way of looking at them. Boundaries don't begin with controlling someone else's behavior. They begin with noticing where your own attention has gone. And I learned that fear will often convince me to leave myself in order to protect a relationship. But with a pause, I can create awareness. And that pause gives me the space to choose my values instead of those old survival patterns that I learned when I was a child. And maybe most importantly, we learn that every time we honor what we already know, we strengthen the most important relationship we have, the relationship with ourselves. So I hope this may have helped you change the way you see boundaries. Because now I believe every boundary asks one simple question. Will I stay connected to myself? Or will I leave myself and abandon myself to make someone else more comfortable? So maybe use those questions and they can help change your life like they did mine. And your life won't suddenly become easier. And believe it or not, you're still going to have people that don't agree with your choices. But I stopped abandoning myself. And I spend every day of my life with myself. So this week, I want to invite you to try one simple experiment. Next time you catch yourself becoming an unpaid detective, trying to figure out what someone else is thinking, trying to predict what they're going to do, or feeling pressure to say yes when your whole body is saying no, take one slow breath in and bring your attention back to yourself. Then ask yourself, what am I feeling? What am I afraid might happen if I'm honest? And what choice is most aligned with my values? You might still say yes, and your answer might be no. The goal isn't choosing one answer or the other. The goal is making sure it's your answer, because every time you choose your awareness over autopilot and choose your values over fear, you stay connected to yourself and strengthen your relationship with yourself. So if today's conversation resonated with you, I invite you to join my school community, Rapid Reset. And that's where we continue these conversations, exploring topics like boundaries, attachment, self-trust, emotional growth. And in that community, I'm developing a network where we support each other as we grow. So I'd love to have you there. Again, it's called the Rapid Reset Method in school. Also, if you know anyone who could benefit from today's message, please share this live with them. You never know whose life you might impact with just one single click. So some housekeeping items. Next Saturday is the 4th of July weekend, so I'm going to take the weekend off. And I hope you all have a wonderful holiday. Spend time with the people you love, and spend some time reconnecting with yourself. And then I'll be back on the 11th, and we're going to explore love versus attachment, why they can feel so similar, but they're actually very different, and how understanding that difference can transform the way we experience relationships. So I've been there myself. I've confused attachment with love, and I'd love to share what I've learned with you. So thank you so much for spending this time with me today, and thank you for letting me be human with you. So I don't share these stories because I have life all figured out. I share them because every lesson I learn has first changed me. And my hope is that by sharing my journey, it helps you become more aware of your own patterns, more compassionate with yourself, and more willing to choose yourself when it matters most. Because that's really what this journey is about. Not becoming someone new, but coming home to yourself. And please remember this. Every boundary is a decision to not leave yourself. So with this, awareness creates choice, and choice creates freedom. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful week. And I look forward to on the 11th and joining you about attachment versus love. I wish you all the best.